Hello everyone, Jai Hind and welcome to the platform of StudyIQ IAS in English. My name is Bhavar Singh Surya, makes India 115th course and qualified civil services in 2012, and I welcome you on the platform. Now over here in this session, we'll be talking about a recent intervention that had been started for the diabetes in India. And now this is quite important because here we are talking about a single weekly dose of the insulin that have been approved in India. Now over here we'll be talking about the complete issue and also about how this will change the complete, you can say the medical perspective for the diabetes management in India. But before moving ahead, let me tell you that we have the lowest price drop on the platform StudyIQ, and you can utilize this offer by using the code BRS Live so that you can enroll into any of the courses which are available on the platform of StudyIQ, and that will fetch you this discount. Now, when it comes to the complete news, this is about, weekly jab or weekly injection that had been approved for the diabetes management in India. Now, we have the Novo Nordisk, basically, which have launched Awiqli. That is the insulin Icodec, that is world's first once weekly basal insulin that had been launched in India, and ultimately that marks India as the 7th global market of this injection. Now, over here, when it comes to the scale, so it is quite important to know that when it comes to the number of people that are here in India which are diabetic, so we have the world's second largest diabetes burden, where we have more than 101 million diabetics and 136 million pre-diabetics as per the the report that was published by ICMR in 2023. Now, also there is the delay. When it comes to the patients, they basically stay on the oral drugs for nearly about 7 to 9 years before they start taking the insulin. And this is far longer than the clinically ideal. And because over here, what happens is that the daily injections that have to be taken in diabetes, they feel burdensome, stigmatizing, and even hard to sustain as well. Now, there is the governance stake when it comes to the complete issue, because a weekly jab is not just a product launch. Basically, it is about the testing, or it is about the test about whether the pharmaceutical innovation that can move faster than the India's public health system that can absorb the complete, the system that we are talking about. So this is all about the burden that we have in India related to the diabetes, where we have 6 million of the Indians which are currently on insulin therapy, and that is expected to rise towards 9 million. There is also 7 to 9 years average delay between the oral drug failure and the insulin initiation in India. Now, this is quite important because ultimately if the blood sugar levels, they are not, managed in the diabetic patient, what happens is that it is not just about blood sugar. This impacts the kidneys, this impacts your liver, this impacts the heart as well, and also it can lead to the blindness. So therefore, this is quite important, and it is quite important that after the launch of this weekly jab, so what will happen is that instead of 365 injections, there will be only 52 injections that have to be taken in a year, and that is why this is quite important. Now, when it comes to the insulin, so it was in 1921 when the insulin was discovered. It was Benting and Best. They isolated the insulin in Toronto, and ultimately it becomes the first biological drug, so it can turn a fatal disease into the manageable one. Now, later on between 1990s to 2000, this was the time period in 1991 when we have started with the liberalization, privatization and globalization. So ultimately what happened was, because of the liberalization era lifestyle, so there was a shift in the complete lifestyle of the Indians, which had led to the sharp rise in the type 2 diabetes, and thereby India had earned the label of the diabetes capital of the world. Now, between 2008 to 2020, there was ICMR India mapping, where it was the first nationwide all-state diabetes survey which have quantified the burden significantly and precisely, which have said that there are 101 million diabetics and 136 million pre-diabetics which are there in India in 2023. All right. Now, when it comes to the 2017 to 2023, there were the onward trials program, where there were the 6 global phase 3 trials that have tested the insulin Icodec against the daily basal insulin in over 4,000 patients, which proved that there is the comparable safety of the insulin Icodec. Then in 2024, there were the first global approvals where EU, that is European Union, Japan and Canada, they approved the Awiqli, and ultimately the US initially issued a complete response letter, but later on this was resolved. And now we have Awiqli, which had been launched in India at 261 rupees per week price, and this is the 7th country worldwide that have gotten the access to the weekly jab or Awiqli that we are talking about. Now, when it comes to the complete drug regulation, so who controls, who regulate, and who gives the prices? So this is quite important to understand, because this is the administrative framework that we are talking about, which actually UPSC asks. Now, when it comes to the regulation, so regulation in India for any drug, it happens through the CDSCO, that is Central Drug Standards Control Organization, which is controlled by DGCI, or Director Drugs Controller General of India. All right. So we have DCGI, and ultimately they approve the drug for the sale that could be there in India. And there is Ministry of Health and Family Welfare as well, that is at the apex, or the ministry that is responsible for overall policy formulation, and it is the authority for the policy for any of the drug that must be there in India. Then we have the pricing and the excess, that is decided by NPPA, that is National Pharmaceutical Pricing Authority, which caps the prices of the essential and the scheduled medicines which are there. And we have the state health departments which are responsible for procurement for the public hospitals. And ultimately, when it comes to the insurance coverage, so that is decided by the insurers and the Ayushman Bharat PMJAY. All right, that is Jan Aushadhi Yojana or Jan Ayushman Yojana. All right. Then we have the surveillance and delivery, that is done by ICMR, which is responsible for the research and epidemiological evidences, where it has conducted the INDIAB study as well. So we have Indian Council for Medical Research, basically, which is responsible for research and development. And then we have NPNCD. Now, NPNCD is the national program for the prevention and control of the non-communicable diseases. And when it comes to the hypertension, when it comes to the strokes, when it comes to the diabetes as well, they are basically the non-communicable diseases which are rising in India, and they are under the National Health Mission, which is where we have the screening at the primary health centers, and WHO or World Health Organization. It is basically looking after the global diabetes norms, the compact and the technical norms as well. So over here, it is quite important that when it comes to the diabetes, so how we have the other nations which are basically, they are treating the complete perspective. So we have Novo Nordisk home market, that is there in Denmark. All right, in Denmark, you will see that there is the universal public health coverage, and insulin is free at a point of use regardless of the type or the brand as well. And over here, India can take the lessons of the universal coverage that removes the affordability quotient entirely, and India's insurance architecture, it is still catching up. And when it comes to diabetes, it is basically not covered by the insurance. So this is quite important. When it comes to UK or United Kingdom, so there is the centralized NHS price negotiation, and even formulary listing decide which insulins are free on the prescription. Now, there is a single national negotiator that we can, implement in India, that gets better bulk pricing than the fragmented state-by-state procurement. Then again, in the United States, there is a market-based pricing that is there. We know that there is free market in United States. There is historic high insulin prices that led to 2022-23 federal cap, that is of $35 per month insulin price cap for the Medicare. Now, over here, it is quite important that even wealthy countries, they needed a direct price regulation, and that is the lesson that we have for India, where the market alone, it did not solve the affordability. So these are the lessons that India can take from the global, regime. So that would be all in this session. I hope that now it is understood to you that we have launched the weekly jab or weekly injection for the diabetes, which can manage the diabetes in the patients, and that is quite important for India, which have the rising burden for the diabetics. Now over here, let me once again remind you that we have the Resolution P2I batch, which is basically the GS Foundation batch, where we have the complete batch based on the SMART model, where you get the structured classes, you get the mentorship, you get assessment, you get the revision and the test series as well. Now over here on the platform of StudyIQ, we have the lowest priced job that you can see, and you can use the code BRS Live for enrolling into the GS Foundation batch on the platform of StudyIQ. And not just GS Foundation batch, for any of the batch, you can use the same code and you will get the lowest price, that is the maximum discount on the platform of StudyIQ. So that would be all in today's session. Thank you very much guys for joining me over here, but do not forget to like the session, to share the session with your friends, and even to subscribe to our channel so that you do not miss any of the updates in the future. Thank you, bye-bye, take care, and Jai Hind.